Yo, what is up, FPG fam? Further here, and welcome back to another Aether Gazer video. So it has come to my attention that when you first start the game, especially if you're a new player or a returning player, that Aether Gazer can be a bit overwhelming, and I can understand because I was a returning player, leaving the game for 6 months and coming back, and there was a lot of new things. But I can only imagine for a brand new player just joining the game how overwhelming everything can be, and how some of the systems can be a bit convoluted. So in today's video, just because I love the game so much and I don't want to see anybody leave just because there's too much and they get a little overwhelmed, I want to go ahead and do just a full breakdown, an ultimate beginner's guide to try and make things a little bit simpler, a little bit easier to understand, so that way you don't feel so overwhelmed as a player and you can enjoy the game for what it is, which is a fantastic game, a special game, a game that you could really truly enjoy for all the little nuances and intricacies that it does provide. And you can start to see the developers' passion in each and every new patch that they go ahead and roll out, and each and new modifier that comes out when they do. So with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and hop in. I'm gonna try and be pretty precise. I'm gonna try and compartmentalize everything for you. And if there's anything that I missed, let me know in the comments down below. I do hope this helps, and let me know if this video brings you some value. So obviously when you first join the game, a lot happening on screen, right? Probably a lot of red dots that you might see around, but don't get distracted by all that. If you're a new player just joining the game, start completing the story, right? And this goes for most gacha games. When you're joining the game, you're just getting kind of integrated what the game has to offer in terms of the story, which Aether Gazer has a fantastic story, by the way. I don't recommend skipping. I actually do recommend paying attention to the story. It is really good, and it only gets better as the game goes on. But anyways, the story allows you to immerse yourself within the universe, or said universe, of Aether Gazer. So I recommend, I have some story to go ahead and complete. I've been working on just trying to get modifiers built up, which I'm going to do kind of like an update to my account because there are some new things that happen. Anyways, I digress. Go ahead and complete the story, pay attention to the story, it is fantastic. But that is my first recommendation. Come over, do the story, focus on that, use your most favorite modifiers that you've obtained so far, and go ahead and knock out the story on normal. If you want to go ahead and try extra hard, you could definitely do extra hard if that is your forte. It's not something that you have to focus on, just do normal, get that taken care of, get that done, okay? Now we're going to go ahead and move on to side story, which is something that you can go ahead and take on as well if you are in the middle of, completing certain parts of the game. Let's say, for example, you completed all of the main story. You can go ahead and take on some of the side story and go ahead and complete those as well if you have the time and if you have the stamina. So you have your main story, you have your side story. But when you come over here, oh, let me show you the rest of the side story, which I have to complete some of the side story as well. I'm telling you, building up characters to try and put out guides for them and to be able to provide you content for them really puts me behind when it comes to main story and side story. I digress once again. But go ahead and complete your main story, complete your side story. Once you do that, then you have a lot of these other modes that you're taking a look at. Once again, can be a little overwhelming because it's right in your face. You have hazard zone cleaning, you have testing, you have joint training, you have battle sweep. If you go over to supplies, you have your daily resource grinds, you have your sigils, you have your challenges. Let's break it all down, right? So let's go to the first part, which is the beginning. Let's talk about hazard zone cleaning. Basically all of these modes are going to be important in terms of building up your modifiers and gaining the resources that you need to go ahead and max them out or min-max them. Hazard zone cleaning is going to be extremely important, probably one of the most important game modes when it comes to Aether Gazer because of the rewards that it provides. So as you can see, I went ahead and completed most of it. I still need to, I can do 28 and 29, but 30 is a bit challenging as of right now. I'm gonna go ahead and be able to complete that very soon, but you can see the resources or rewards that you can get, and one of the most important resources are the reconstructors that you can see here. But also the warp materials that you're going to need to be able to warp out your modifiers, which we'll go more into detail about here in just a second. As you start to go higher in tiers or levels for hazard zone cleaning, you'll need to have 2 teams. So just go ahead and keep that in mind. But for the time being, as a new player, just complete what you can. And then as you progress through the game, you'll be able to start putting more teams together and then be able to complete the harder parts of Has His Own Cleaning. But for right now, just go ahead and focus on what you can complete. Worry about the rest later, right? Because that'll come over time. Has His Own Cleaning, very important. I recommend to go ahead and do that each and every time that it's up, so that way you're getting the rewards, because you're going to need them. You run out of the reconstructors very quickly and the work materials, so, and they're hard to come by. You can only get them in a very select few places. They're opening more places to get them, but as of right now it's still pretty niche in my opinion, or pretty scarce. Testing, this is really something that you want to focus on more towards the end game. As you're building up your account, you're starting to min-max your modifiers. Testing is where you're going to go ahead and get the materials to boost your skills even further, to make your modifiers hit even harder. This is something that you can focus on down the road. Even as a returning player myself, missed out on 6 months, I'm getting back into it. I had a pretty beefy account before I left. I'm still having a difficult time completing this, because you have to have certain stats, not stats, well, they say recommended stats, it's more like recommended elements for each of the testing for the bosses. So as you can see, for this one's electric and wind, this one's ice. So you're going to have various different teams that you're going to need for testing to be able to complete it. Difficulty can be pretty challenging once you get to like 7 and 8. So as a new player, this is something that you can worry about down the road, but you're definitely going to want to start getting your account up to snuff to be able to take this on if you are trying to be meta, and if you're trying to make your modifiers as strong as they possibly can. This is something that you're going to want to focus on. Once again, a little later down the road, joint training. This is honestly where you're probably going to be spending most of your stamina, I want to say. If it's not for like an event going on or something of that nature, you'll be coming over here to the joint training for your stamina if you complete everything else and you don't have anything else to focus on, because this is where you're going to go ahead and get this material, the sigil module, which is going to help you to enchant your sigils. We'll talk about that more here in just a second, but this is where you're probably going to be spending most of your stamina for the most part if you have nothing else going on. Once again, like an event or something of that nature. Battle sweep, this is going to be for your sigils. Once again, we're going to talk more about sigils here in just a moment, but these are essentially, you know, to equate it to another game to make it easier, like your relics or your artifacts. Sigils are what you're going to go ahead and place on your modifiers to give them extra stats and be able to do some additional things that they couldn't do otherwise. And modifiers do have specific sigils that are more tailor-made to them than others. You have to put them in specific slots. We'll talk, once again, we'll go more into sigils here in just a moment, but this is where you're going to obtain your sigils if you need them. Now, I will say with sigils, you can go ahead, well, with the battle sweep, let me say, you can go ahead and pick a specific sigil set that you're trying to focus on. You pick it, you go into the mode, and then you're able to go ahead and obtain that said sigil, and you can obtain various different kinds. Now, there are some limited sigils that you cannot get here, that you would have to get through the event, which we'll talk about the event here in just a moment, and that's where you'll obtain those. So those are the modes that you see on the home screen when you click in to do your main story. Not anything to be overwhelmed about, just things to complete. Once again, testing you can worry about later down the road. Joint training, you use your stamina here for your enchants. If you need sigils, you can go here, you don't have to. And then Has His Own Cleaning, you definitely want to go ahead and complete, right? Now, moving over to supplies, this is probably the easiest part to go ahead and talk about. This is your daily resource grind, right? You have your coins, which is your currency. This is something that you're gonna, you know, have to get. You don't always come here, to be honest with you. You get a lot of coins through various different means. This is if you're in a pinch, right? And you need to go ahead and finish out maxing out a character. You would come here and go ahead and get that. Your simulation battle, this is where you're going to get the materials to level up your characters. This is your skill points. This is what's going to allow you to skill up your character or level up the skills towards the characters. So your normal attacks, your skill 1, 2, and 3. This is where you're going to gain the material for that. This material right here is going to be able to level up your access key, which is the weapon associated or tied to your said modifier. This material right here for extreme extraction is one that you use in multiple different places. So this one's probably going to be, I would say, one of the most important ones, just because it's used in multiple different areas and you need a lot of them. So you'll probably be visiting this one, I would say, the most out of each and every one of these. outside of maybe the skill points. This would probably be the one that you come to the most for your supplies or your daily resource grind. And then here is the material to go ahead and level up your modifier even further, right? No pun intended. So that is the supplies. This is just an area to come to if you need it for certain things when you're maxing out your modifier. Now moving over to sigils. Sigils is a whole beast in of itself. Honestly, I have a whole dedicated video to sigils. If you want to check it out, hopefully leave it at the end of this video. But sigils are, once again, your artifacts, your relics, whatever you want to call it. In Aether Gazer, it's called sigils. So we already talked about Battle Suite. This is where you can actually get said sigil that you're looking for. We talked about Joint Training. This is to be able to enchant your sigils, which we'll talk about more here in just a second. Gen Zone Analytics, this is how you level up your sigils. And then Spirit Captures is how you take your sigils a little further beyond. Once again, no pun intended. This is how you get it to level 50 and level 60. As a new player, you really don't have to worry about that. This is, once again, more for endgame, veteran players, returning players. New players, this is something that you'll worry about here a little bit later down the road. Not anything you have to worry about just yet. But if you want to go ahead and do it and get a head start, you certainly can, but you don't have to. Moving on to challenges. So we already talked about hazard zone cleaning. Now we do have reoccurring dreams. So I would say like the things that you are going to be tackling on a pretty, not pretty, it is a reoccurring basis. Like a weekly basis is your hazard zone cleaning, and you can see when it refreshes your reoccurring dream, your dimensional variable, your testing. Once again, that's more end game testing. Your past grudges, you do want to go ahead and complete. Casualty survey is not something that I worry about too much, but it is something that you can do if it's, your fancy. Completely up to you. But hazard zone cleaning, 100%. Reoccurring dream, 100%. Now, reoccurring dream is where you get 4 bosses or 2 or 3 bosses depending on where you're at. Right now I'm on Distorted Dreams 2, which is the max difficulty at the moment. But as a beginning or new player, you'll probably be lower down. Not probably, you will be until you get your account built up, right? Each time reoccurring dreams refreshes, there's different elements, weaknesses towards the enemy. So for example, weakness to wind, you're obviously going to want to bring wind modifiers. Physical, you get the point, right? So this is where you're now starting to build up different teams. So when you first start the game out, you probably have one team, not even a complete team. You probably have your favorite modifier, a modifier that supports it slightly, and then a third whatever. But as you progress and you get more modifiers and you start to build your account up, you're now focusing on specific teams, which I plan on doing a meta team tier list thing in another video. Be on the lookout for that, to how, what teams to build and things of that nature. But anyways, you're now starting to round out your first team, and now you're thinking about building a second team. This is where it's going to become useful here in hazard zone cleaning and testing. Is where you're going to start building those teams, focusing on a specific element. For example, physical is the hot commodity at the moment because we have Thoth out with Sekhmet and all that good stuff. So this is where they're going to be utilized. Now, do you have to use, said weakness element to? You don't have to. Honestly, if I went in here with my physical team on wind weakness, we'll get it done, right? But that is if your modifiers are built correctly and you know how to play the game correctly, you'll be able to get it done. Anyways, you're gonna come here. that was a rant, right? You're gonna come here for the rewards. The rewards are great at Recurring Dream. You get like 400 of your shifting stars, and you get these 2 materials right here. These 2 materials are fantastic to be able to come over here to get Transcendence Cubes, to transcend your signature functors, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. If you have to reforge, materials right here for your sigils, which we'll talk about in just a moment, and to get the sigil modules, which we talked about enchanting your sigils. Also, if you're a new player, you are able to get Jin for free, which she is a fantastic modifier to go ahead and grab. Of course, you want to do that. That's one of the first things you're going to focus on, is getting Jin for free, and then you can go ahead and get shards here that or are they called shards? Intel. You're able to get intel here to be able to take your modifier higher up. You can transcend them, right, to double S, triple S over time, and you have all these modifiers here if you own them currently, right? And then the blue ones are for your A ranks, the orangish yellow ones are for your S ranks, right? A really nice free-to-play system that allows you to progress your account, increase your account, and also to be able to transcend your favorite modifiers, right? Like to be able to do Hera, that's phenomenal. To be able to do, you know, Tsukiyomi, fantastic. Hades, that's a W, right? Osiris, you get the point. Anyways, that's what Reoccurring Dream is all about. Fantastic spot right there. Dimensional Variable is actually a kind of like a roguelike mode. Really cool mode to go ahead and participate in. I tend to forget to do it from time to time, but it's really cool. You bring a modifier, it's like a roguelike, you get buffs and you continue to go through it. The shop for a Dimensional Variable is decent. Before, it was just getting the general 5-star Gen Zone functors, which is fine, right? Especially as a free-to-play player, that's great. But now they went ahead and added this material right here, your Operation Record, which is able to take your modifiers, once again, no pun intended, further beyond to make them even stronger. Once again, as a new player, you don't have to worry about that at the moment. You're probably going to be more focused on getting the 5-star general functors for the Gen Zone, because once again, for free-to-play players, this is really great. It's a good spot to go to. So Dimensional Variable, really cool. Testing we talked about, Casualty Survey, something you can participate in to get more resources if you want to. Past Grudges is where you're going to be able to get a lot of your shifted stars, a lot of your premium currency to go ahead and pull forward. But not only that, you can see you get Gen Zone functors, 5-star general one, shifted stars, you get the modules, a lot of resources that you can pick up here as a new player. Now, as a new player, you won't be able to complete a lot of this. I mean, you'll get through, you know, a good amount. But right here, I would say 9 is a good account check. This is where, especially when the game first came out, a lot of people would get stuck on and they realize that their account is not up to snuff, not where they thought it was. And this is where you then have to go back to the drawing board, focus on your account, build up your modifiers, build up your teams, get your teams correct, and things of that nature. So 9, have fun, new players. That's a good time. Once you pass 9, you know your account is doing pretty well. And then, as you can see, there's a lot of past grudges that you can do. I'm hoping that they put more, because you get a lot of shifted stars and a lot of really good resources here. So past grudge is great. And then you have your tutorials. Just make sure you do your tutorials. It's free shifted stars, right? And you'll be able to unlock Aether codes. Anyways, in terms of when you click battle, that is everything in battle. It's really not that overwhelming once you break it down on what you need to focus on, right? Because when you come here, you think you have to do everything. You really don't. It's only specific things that you have to do, and then other things that you want to do. It just really depends on what you need to get done that day. And then you kind of take it from there. So as a new player, focus on main story, focus on side story. If you have hazards on cleaning up, go ahead and complete as much as you can. Don't worry about testing. Joint training, if you need it, do it. Sigils, battle sweep, if you need to do it, do it. Any supplies that you need, go ahead and get them. Sigils, something that you can worry about down the road, not a big deal, you know, especially in the beginning. And then complete the past grudges as much as you can. Try and do Reoccurring Dream if you're able to, and complete Dimensional Variable, right? It's as simple as that. And then Casualty Survey is more of like a laid back thing. If you want to do something different and you want some more premium currency, go ahead and knock that out, right? So that is battle. Not too difficult, not too hard, right? Let's move over to the event. So every patch, they have a new event where they come out with a brand new main story, easy enough. They come out with a new side story, easy enough. They come out with the new modifier that you can go ahead and test out, fantastic. Then they have usually a joint defense, and the joint defense is where you're going to come over here to go to the logistic depot to be able to get the sigils specific to that said modifier that came out. Typically this is how it's done, right? So this is where you get the new limited sigil where you can't get in the battle suite. This is where you'll come here to get the limited sigil for that new modifier. Not only that, you get a lot of really good resources here. Some I already went ahead and obtained as sold out. So you want to make sure you're doing this and completing this if you're able to as a new player. Now this is also where you're able to get other limited sigils, and they do rotate on a daily basis. As you can see, these 2 are up right now, then 2 brand new ones will be up, and this is where you can then go ahead and obtain the limited sigils that you might have missed out on for modifiers that came out previously, you know, in the past. So that way you're not missing out. You just need to make sure you're checking this each and every time. And this is where you would come to the unknown part right here. Now, as a new player, I will admit this might be something that you can't complete right off the bat, but once again, not a big deal, because as a new player, the sigils is something that you're going to worry about down the road, right? In the beginning, you're able to complete most of the content with whatever you have, just slapping things together. It's usually towards the end game and you're getting into the harder content where you then want specific sigils tied to that specific modifier to then be able to complete the content, right? But that's down the road. So nothing to worry about here. What you would probably be doing for the most part are these stages, which is something that you can complete with your stamina, which then gives you the material for the logistic depot, which is this material right here. So this is, you know, the supply list, and this is where you can use that material to then go ahead and purchase the rewards. Hopefully that makes sense. So that is the joint defense. Really great separate resource area that you can go ahead and utilize. You know, once you do your main story, once you do your side story, if you have some stamina left over, come over here, right? Or you know, if you don't want to do the main story and side story that day, you don't want to do any other resource, you just want to come here to get more resources, or you want to clean out the shop before the time ends because there's a timer, then come over here, use your stamina here, not a problem, right? And then in the event, they're going to have different events going on that you can participate in if you want to at the time. You don't have to. If you feel overwhelmed, just focus on the things that you want to focus on, but you can come over here if you want to deviate from the daily, you know, same combat feel. If you want to do something different, you can come over here and come to the event and do something a little bit different, right? Gray box testing, Imago Nightmare. If you can't complete these things as a new player, don't feel bad about that. It's not a big deal. It's something that you will be able to complete down the road. It's just getting integrated with the game a little bit more, getting more knowledge about the game, developing more skills, and that all comes over time, right? Everything is over time, and you'll start to realize that a lot of this is not as difficult as it may seem. It just takes a little time to understand exactly what all we have here, because it's a lot that they're throwing at you at the same time. But that is the event, and it's always going to be in this right hand corner here. So we talked about battle, we talked about the event. Let's go ahead and talk about what's on the left side here. So for me, I got the welcome home. That's a returning player. You probably don't have to worry about that as a new player. Cooperation agreement, that's going to be your regular battle pass. Not much to talk about there. Study program, as a new player, you're just going to want to complete that. Newcomer event, you just want to complete that. Right, that's the left side taken care of. Let's talk about modifiers, because they're a beast all on their own. So we have the brand new modifier Thoth. Let's talk about her, right? So when it comes to modifiers, there's a lot that they have added to give you additional things to do. And this is where I can understand people saying that it's gotten a little convoluted. I can definitely understand that, but it's really not as convoluted as you think once we break it down for you. So here is where you're going to transcend your modifier if you have additional copies of them. You can think of them as like constellations in other games, right? Now limit break is where you're able to level them up, and you can limit break them even further. We talked about the resource to be able to limit break them, right? To level them up to 100, which is max. You have your stats, and you can check further stats. Easy enough, right? Moving over to skills, this is what we talked about, increasing your skill level with those skill points that you can obtain through the supply area that we talked about. Every modifier has a normal attack, skill 1, skill 2, skill 3, ultimate skill chains, and dodge. Dodge you don't have to level up, and ultimate skill chain you don't have to level up. Just all of these on the right hand side. Now you level them up with those skill points that we talked about, and you can get them to max level 35. They go further as you get more transcendence into a modifier. So for example, double S, it's going to give me additional, let's say, normal attack, right? So that's why it's 45 instead of 35. Now you can take them even further beyond. This is something that has recently happened within the game. If you want to, let's say Thoth is your most favorite modifier, you want her to hit extremely hard on the normal attack, then you go to stat boost, and this is where testing comes into play. This is why I said this is end game, not a new player thing to worry about, because you come to testing, and testing is where you then get this material right here to then take her skill further. Once again, not something that you have to worry about as a new player. This is end game content for veteran players to take their favorite modifier and make them extremely meta, essentially, right? But for the meantime, just go ahead and max them out as best you can. Access key. This is the weapon for the modifier, essentially. Now each weapon for each modifier goes to level 60, so you level the weapon up, and then you attach what's called a signature functor to the said weapon or access key. Now the signature functor is what provides the modifier additional buffs or a new gameplay style to be able to use depending on what modifier it is and what type of signature functor. Each signature functor is tied to a specific modifier, and you're able to obtain signature functors either through the shop or through the limited scans that are there. Now the great thing about Aether Gazer and what makes this game so amazing is that whenever a new signature functor is introduced to the game, it is there forever, meaning there is no FOMO associated with the said weapon. So let's take, I don't know, Wuthering Waves for example, Honkai Star Rail, Genshin Impact, you know, those most popular games. Whenever a weapon is introduced for the said, you know, character that's come out, so there's the new character for the patch, and then there is their signature weapon. Usually after 30 days, whatever the case may be, that patch ends, then the character goes away and the signature weapon goes away, and you would have to wait for a rerun. In Aether Gazer, the character goes away or the modifier, but the signature functor, their said weapon, stays. And that's what's amazing. So you don't have to feel pressured to get it right away. You can get it down the line. Let's say there's a dull patch, or let's say there's a modifier that comes out that you're not interested in. Then you saved up your premium currency for the signature functor for the modifier previously that you weren't able to get, but now you can. That's what's amazing about this game. Also, they have 4-star ones, right? And then they have the general 5-star Gen Zone one, which is Gen Zone for the modifiers, which we can actually talk about. Great segue, because I forgot to talk about that. So each modifier has an element, and they also have a specific typing. So what I mean by that, for example, let's take Thoth. She is of the physical element. She is a ranged modifier, so you have melee and range, and she is energy modifier. So there's energy, there's divine grace, there's rage, there's traces. These are all different playstyles for the modifiers. And then there are gen zones associated with each modifier. So each modifier is tied to a gen zone. So for Thoth, she is of the Nile gen zone, but there's also Olympus, Sinnoh, Yggdrasil, Asterism, and Tianwan being the newest one, or the most recent one, I should say. Now what's great about gen zones is that when you tie two modifiers of the same gen zone, you get the gen zone effect, and then you get the modified bonus effects as well, right? And that can substantially boost the damage or different attributes associated with that combination. So for example, with Olympus, if you have multiple Olympus modifiers, 2 or 3 on the same team, you increase modified mode for 2 seconds and you get index multipliers. These are all really great things, and this is what attributes to team building. So when you're building a team, you want to think about gen zones, but you also want to think about elements. And so that's what's really good about Aether Gazer, are those two things that you can pair together. So that is gen zone, those are stats. That's how you level up the modifiers. We talked about the skill. Now ultimate skill chains is something that's really unique to Aether Gazer. I talked about this in a previous video. Most, if not all, modifiers have an ultimate skill chain with another modifier. All that really means is that each modifier has their own ultimate on their own solo, but they also have a partner that they have an ultimate skill chain with, and it has a different animation, which is really cool and unique, and something that the developers didn't have to do, but they decided to do that, and it makes this game very unique than others. And it provides additional buffs and additional perks, and usually that leads to team building as well. So you'll focus on gen zone, you'll focus on elements, and then skill chain is probably like the last part of it, but it is an important part nonetheless. Okay, now moving on from there, we're going to talk about, we talked about the access key, signature functors, right? We talked about how you can transcend the signature functor, which is either with the transcendent cube that we talked about, where you can get from the reoccurring dream, or if you get additional copies, right? So we're going to go ahead, now we're going to move on to sigils. This is the big boy right here. So sigils, as you can see, there's 6 of them, and that is for each and every modifier. Each and every modifier have a signature set associated with them, and then also a recommended build. So what's great about this new patch that has updated is that they do provide what most players are using. You can definitely go off of this as a new player. For the most part, this is going to be accurate in terms of how you're going to want to build your modifiers. And yes, the placement is paramount. It is important. It's a priority. So you see the limited signature set for Thoth is going to be in 1, 3, and 5. That's important. Why? Because it's associated with the skill associated with the sigil. So for example, this one right here, if I was to go to, let me see, cultivate, and if I was to go to enchant, every sigil has a fixed effects. So you can see it right here. Now the fixed effects is associated with which spot you put the sigil. Hopefully you're following me. So the limited sigil set for Thoth needs to be in 1, 3, and 5 because it's going to give you the desired fixed effects that you're looking for. So in this case, this one being in 1 is giving me Fierce Assault, which is additional attack and additional physical damage. This is perfect for Thoth and exactly what you're looking for outside of like crit damage and crit rate. But for example, if I was to put this one not in 1 but in 2, it may give me like HP and like crit rate, or like HP and healing received. Something that's not that desired for your DPS, right? So having these sigils in a specific placing is important. So keep that in mind. So you want to have them ordered in a specific way. So if you go here, you can see they're ordered in a specific way: 1, 3, and 5, 2, 4, and 6. And that is for the fixed effects. And then from there, you can enchant them to get skill effects. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. So we talked about where their placement are, and then we're going to talk about cultivating them. So you're going to level them up to 60 if you can. As a new player, you're probably only going to be able to get them to 40 until you can then do spirit capture, right? We talked about spirit capture where you can get that material to level them up, limit break them essentially to 50 and then to 60, okay? So that's how you're going to level them up. Now, enchants are where you're going to give them additional effects. Once again, this is like rolling stats on an artifact or a relic. Think of it that way. So you have your fixed effect because that's where you have them in their specific placing. And then you have their enchant effects. This is where we talked about using those modules. So if I go here, using these modules to be able to roll these stats. Now, if you use the purple, you're only going to roll the top stat, not the bottom stat. If you use the gold, you're going to roll both the top and the bottom, right? So there's certain ways you can go about it. Now, let's say, for example, I got exactly what I'm looking for here. Crit damage, perfect for my DPS, right? But the Holy Vessel healing received, not the greatest, right? What I can do is I can lock the top. Now you can see here at the bottom, blue is locked, purple is locked, because now I can only use the gold to re-roll the bottom, and it takes 5 instead of 1. You see that? So now this is end game stuff. This is mid-maxing to the extreme. I don't even have enough coins to be able to do this, but essentially it's going to keep crit damage all the way through. That's not going to change. It's only going to re-roll the bottom stat, because now what we're looking for is the perfect god roll. We're looking for crit damage and then like crit rate or attack percent. That is the god roll, and that is essentially what you're looking for. But that's end game stuff. In the beginning, if you're just able to get 2 stats and they're decent, keep it, move on, wait until end game to be able to do all of that stuff, because I tell you what, this resource grind right here is absurd. And you're going to be spending a lot of time here just trying to re-roll the perfect stats. Like, for example, here, phenomenal example. Crit rate, attack percent, god roll. We're keeping this. Lock it down. Lock it down. You know, we're not re-rolling that. That's perfect. That's what you're looking for on your DPS. Really any modifier, to be quite honest with you. So you're going to go through each and every sigil, and you're going to enchant them twice. One here, and that's how you're going to max them out, right? So that is the enchants. Now moving over to Forge. Forge is if you're just looking to try and change them from one sigil to another without having to, once again, level them all the way back up. It's just a quality of life update. Once again, new player, you don't have to worry about that. But if your sigils aren't maxed out like mine are, then this right here, instead of saying forge, would be reconstruct. Let me see if I can give you an example here. So if we were to go Heimdall, perfect example here. So if we go to Heimdall, I go to cultivate, see how it says reconstruct instead of forge? The reason being is because it is right now not reconstructed to Heimdall, which I'll show you here in just a second, but it's not limit broken also. So what we need to do in order to limit break it to 50, we need to reconstruct it to Heimdall specifically. So the max you can get a sigil to is to level 40. If you want to take it further to 50 and 60, you have to make it specific to your modifier. And how do we do that? We go to reconstruct, and now we're talking about a gen zone reconstruction and a clarifying reconstruction. Now this is where things get really convoluted, and I wish they would change this, but unfortunately they haven't, and I think they should. But it makes you spend more resources, which then makes you spend more time in the game. Anyways, I digress once again. Is that my third digress or fourth digress? Anyways, gen zone reconstruction means that you are going to reconstruct this sigil for the gen zone that's associated with the modifier. So in this case, Heimdall is a Yggdrasil gen zone modifier. So we want to reconstruct this sigil to the Yggdrasil gen zone. So if I was to hit this, I can't because I don't have enough coins. But if I was to hit this, it's going to be a rolling of the gen zone. So if I hit this button, it may give me the Olympus gen zone. It may give me the Asterism gen zone. And I'm going to continue using one reconstructor until I get the Yggdrasil gen zone, which is this symbol right here. Once I see the symbol, perfect. I stop right there, and now I'm going to clarify it. Clarifying means you are now tying this sigil to Heimdall specifically. So once you clarify it to Heimdall, which you can see it takes 20 reconstructors. This is where all your reconstructors go, and that's why I say doing hazard zone cleaning is important. Reconstructors are incredibly important because they take so much, because you need to do this 6 times, right? So you're going to spend 20 reconstructors to then tie this to Heimdall specifically. Now, what's great about this is that it gives you a massive stat boost, but then it also, once again, allows you to limit break to 50 and 60. And then this sigil is tied to Heimdall, you know, pretty much indefinitely. And that is Heimdall's sigil from here on out, for the most part. And so that is gen zone reconstructing and clarifying reconstructing. I hope that wasn't, once again, that's where the part becomes very convoluted when it comes to sigils, but it really isn't. You just need to gen zone reconstruct it. Once you get the gen zone that you're looking for, then you clarify it to the specific modifier, and then you get great stat boosts, and that's where you're then maxing out your modifier once you do that. Okay, so at this time, my Heimdall is not maxed out on any of the sigils. This is something that I need to focus on when I can. New modifiers come out, I need to focus on them. Resources are scarce. You can see why. So that is sigils. Now warps. Let's talk about warps. And let me use a modifier that I have warps on. Thought, for example. This is the area where you can then become very creative with your modifier. And this is something else that I love about Aether Gazer a lot that not a lot of other gacha games do. It gives you the freedom of expression on how you play your modifier or how you utilize your modifier. This is what differentiates one individual's thought from another individual's thought, right? Unless you want to be meta and follow everybody else, you certainly can. But if you want to be a little more individualistic, if that's a word, and you want to play a different style, warps are going to allow you to do that. And so essentially they give you additional stat bonuses, but then they also give you additional bonuses that can alter your gameplay with the modifier that you're having. So for example, as you can see, I chose increased range damage. The higher the HP, the more non-dot damage. ultimate equation, so I'm doing more ultimate skill chain damage because I have repaired with segment and they have an ultimate skill chain, so I thought that would be perfect. And you can see the other ones here, right? But for example, you can choose, is this the one? You could choose a warp like Unfetter, which gives you more ultimate skill charge, so when you enter the battlefield, you already have your ultimate and you can pop your ultimate right off the bat, whereas somebody that didn't have Unfetter, that's not something that they can do, as an example, right? So this allows you to change your modifier to the way that you like to play the game, and this is what's very cool about warps. And then once again, we talked about the warp material where you obtain this, and that is going to be in Hazard Zone cleaning as well. That's why Hazard Zone cleaning is so important. But as a new player, warps are not something that you're going to focus on in the beginning. Warps is end game, right? Maxing out your sigils to 60, enchanting them perfectly, reconstructing them perfectly, and warps are end game stuff. As a new player, this is probably going to be empty for a while, and then your sigils are probably going to be level 40 for a little bit, right? Until you get more materials and you're able to complete the harder content, so then you can get the materials to be able to do this stuff, okay? But just so you're aware, this is where you're going to be able to obtain those things. And then we have Aether codes. Aether codes, once again, this is what allows, first and foremost, this is another thing that Aether Gazer does different and unique versus most games. I mean, they might have things that are similar, but this allows you to choose the way you want your modifier to play. Much like warps, Aether codes are all different, and you can choose any Aether code path that you want, and this allows you to get additional benefits, additional perks. Depending on the Aether code, allows you to do different things for each modifier. So for example, one Aether code might allow you to teleport, whereas let's say, okay, prime example, we have a red code. Red code allows you to do damage, allows you to obtain, invisible strings, to then obtain thread edge to be able to do more damage, right? But let's say, for example, you imprint all on the blue code, and this allows you to teleport all over the place, whereas with the red code, you can't teleport, right? That's just an example. That's not for Thoth. That's, I think, for Oceanus, like a different modifier. But anyways, I'm just using Thoth because she's here right now. That's what allows you to choose what you want to do. Now you can imprint all if you want, so you can go full red, you go full blue, you can go full yellow if you want, or you can choose, let's say for example, remove print, you can go one yellow, you can go one red, and you go one blue, because you like those. Or you can go 2 yellow, 1 blue, or 2 yellow, 1 red. Right? You could really choose whatever path you want to do, and you can experiment and try different ones and see which ones you like best for your modifier. This is what's really cool about Aether Gazer, and it gives you very unique ways of doing things. But if you want to be meta, you could always go to cultivation strategy, codes recommended. You can see what other players are doing, functors, you can see what they're putting on them, right? But anyways, that is Aether code. This is for every single modifier has 3 Aether code paths, and they are all very, very, very unique. Okay, and then moving on from there, we have chips. Chips are just what allows your modifier to perform, usually in the AI slot, and you can program a modifier to do a specific thing with chips. So let me use more of a support character. Let's use Sekhmet or even a Ling Wang. So Ling Wang, you go here, there's different ways that you can have your AI Ling Wang perform, and AI is where they are in the assisted spot. So you're piloting your main modifier, and then you have your 2 assisted ones, right? And you can put chips on them to then do exactly what you want them to do. So that's what's really cool about chips, and that's something that unlocks a little, later down the road also. So those are modifiers. That is battle. That is event. Talked about modifiers, we talked about the left side. Let's talk about scans. Scans is essentially, where you pull your modifiers, right? You pull your modifiers, and then you also pull their functors. Now, we talked about functors, they're here always. When it comes to functors, you want to always make sure you are choosing the specific gen zone for whatever modifier that you're going for their functors. So for example, we were talking about Thoth. Thoth is of the Nile gen zone, so you want to make sure you have the Nile gen zone selected. Now what's going to happen is you're going to go ahead and pull the Unawakened gen zone, which is this, individual right here, and then you are going to, for 1,000 coins, awaken them to the signature functor for the specific modifier, right? So you want to make sure you're choosing the right one and awakening the right one. You shouldn't have a problem with that. It has their little face right here to assure you that that is the signature functor for that modifier, right? So those are functors in terms of scan. You got 8 out of, or you got 70 pity. Once again, no FOMO here. They're here forever. You don't have to feel pressured. You have your regular scan. This is where you're going to be able to obtain, pretty much your standard modifiers that we have right now, but this is always evolving and always getting additional modifiers here. So for the most part, some really good modifiers here, some better than others, obviously, but you are going to use the yellow tickets for here. I don't recommend using Shifted Stars, only use the yellow tickets here. And you could always save your yellow tickets and wait until the modifier that you enjoy or that you're really looking forward to enters the regular scan, right? So that's something that you can wait for. Keep that in mind. Precise scan, there's 2. So whenever a new modifier comes out, they're always going to be in the precise scan and they're always going to be in the anchored precise scan. What is the difference? Great question. The anchored precise scan is a 90 pity, and at 90 pity, it is guaranteed to be that modifier. Whereas with the precise scan, it is 70 pity. This is the 50-50. If you miss out here, this is more the gambling one. If you miss out on the 50-50, let's say you get a different modifier here, then they are guaranteed in the next 70. So you can potentially go 140 pulls before you get the, one that you're looking for. Whereas here, this is more guaranteed. This is more safe. This is usually where I would recommend you pulling. If you were, trying to be the most cost efficient, in my opinion. But if you're a gambling person, which a lot of you are, I know it, including myself, you can go for the 70, try your luck, right? But that is essentially, I believe, the only difference. I don't think there's really a difference in the actual percentage drop chance, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see here, 55% for S grade, 1.6%, guaranteed 2.4%. If we go to details here, 1.6%, 2.4%, 50%, 50%. Was this 55? This was 55. Yeah, I would go with the 90. I would go with the 90. And then sometimes they do, this is usually a special occasion where they have another precise scan where you can choose a modifier that you're looking for. Maybe there was a modifier that you missed out on. For example, when I was gone for 6 months, I missed out on my most favorite modifier, which is S rank Bazembo. So I went ahead and selected her as a rate up, got her. But this is usually for special occasions. This is not always here every new patch, if I'm not mistaken, unless this is something new that they started. But from my previous knowledge, this is usually for special occasions, for very hype modifiers that come out. They'll do something like this. And then alongside that, they'll bring in S rank selector, which I would recommend holding off on your S rank selector, using it if you have them until you pull. And then once you've done all your pulls, then you can see what you got and then choose with your S rank selector from there, right? So that is scan. The shop is something that you want to go ahead and visit every single day. We have the supply zone. This is where you can get all your packs, your outfits, your skins, all that good stuff. Trading zone is something that you want to visit every day to be able to purchase certain things that you can see. I always buy these things every single day, but you can see what you need. This is where you'll come to your print shop to get certain things, your co-op shop to get certain things, and you can see the materials right here. Intel, this is if you have dupes of specific modifiers, you'll gain these intels to then be able to purchase stuff here. Matrix shop, this is for, if I'm not mistaken, your guild. Make sure you join a guild. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. And this is a material where you can take certain modifiers further beyond. It's the synergy mode where they get, you can think of it like in Dragon Ball Legends, like Zenkai. Essentially, this is pretty much their Zenkai. Resource shop, this is what we talked about. It has zone cleaning. You get those rewards to come over here and get reconstructors, get the warp materials. You can also get other sigils here. These are usually for more niche situations, or if you're like omegaing a specific modifier, you'll come over here to get 2 other ones. Dimensional variable, we talked about this, is where you can get the Zenkai material to take your modifiers further, and then the general 5-star Gen Zone ones for the sigils. Reoccurring dream, we just talked about that earlier, and then testing, we talked about that earlier, right? Moving on to the sigil shop, this is essentially where you can get sigil leveling up materials. I don't recommend using this for this, just go ahead and grind it out with your stamina. But you can come here if you have enough materials here, which you can get this by breaking down other sigils or dismantling them. And then you can use it here to pick the specific sigils that you want. What's really good about this new update is that it then tells you which one that you need. So for example, if you need the 2 slot for this sigil, then here you go. Beforehand, it wasn't like this. It was a little bit more difficult to understand which one you were getting. Now this one's more laid out and it's better. So you can come here and there's tons of sigils here, right? So let's say, for example, you don't want to use your stamina to get that specific sigil in the battle sweep. Or let's say you go to battle sweep and you keep getting Alexander 3, but you really need Alexander 4. Just come here and buy it. Save yourself some stamina if you want to. It's up to you. So that is the shop. Guild. Join a guild. You can join Chaotix Guild, another fantastic YouTuber. Go ahead and look them up. I'll leave hopefully a link to their channel in the description down below. That's the homie. Go ahead and put an application here. There's the UID or the ID if you want to, but join a guild. You get additional perks and resources. Warehouse, this is where you house all your material. Pretty straightforward here, right? And then the flannering, honestly, this is not something you have to be too concerned about. It's like your dormitory system. Just build it up when you can. You know, come here when you can. I usually only come here for the cafeteria or the little shop right here. And I just knock out whatever I need to. Restaurant, shop, do my job, recipe. You know, this is just something you want to do on a daily basis, but it's nothing too big. Nothing too crazy. Unless you're a dormitory person. I'm not, personally. But if you are, go there, knock some stuff out, right? Other than that, I mean, I think that's everything. You're gonna level up your level here. You have your stamina, that you get stamina coolant refreshes. You got your coin, shifted stars. This is premium currency that you buy that you can turn into shifted stars or other stuff. You can buy packs with it. You have your achievements. Make sure you do your achievements. Got other stuff here. I mean, but essentially that is Aether Gazer in a nutshell. Make sure you're doing your daily missions, your weekly missions, your story missions. Check them out. That's Aether Gazer. I mean, once you break it down, it's really not that convoluted. I think the most convoluted thing are sigils and leveling up your modifiers. But other than that, once you compartmentalize those things and you break it down in a kind of systematic form and you organize what you need to get done that day and your priority list, it's not that bad. But it just, if you're a new player, just, of course it's overwhelming, but you need to simply get acquainted with the game. And that goes with any new game that you join, especially a game that's been out for a little bit. They're always updating and putting new things to have new things for you to do. So when you're a new player, you're coming into something that has been built upon for a year, you know, aside from you starting from the beginning, right? When there was a lot less things in here. But hopefully this video helped to break things down for you in a more simpler form, so that way you have a better understanding what you're getting yourself into. Once again, I wanted to do this for new players because I don't want new players to get overwhelmed and leave. I want you guys to stay and enjoy this game like we all do, for the amazing product that they have put out, and to bring more individuals to this game to have more eyes on it. So anyways, I'm gonna get on out of here. It has been an hour, nearly an hour. Holy smokes. I'm gonna get on out of here. Thank you guys for all the support. I do truly appreciate it. Love each and every one of you. Remember to stand out, be different, and have fun. Go further beyond in everything that you do. My name's Cody. Call me further. I'll see you all next one. Bye guys.